I'll say something about it later. I I came to this country in 1964 from Nigeria as a young student. Um, Recently, Patrick has written something about me in Liverpool.
Yes.
So I don't know how many of you had the opportunity to read it, but it was just a brief biography of myself and my experience coming to UK from Nigeria. I don't know how many of you know about Nigeria, probably heard about it. It's in West Africa. And it's one of the British colonies in those days. And it gained independence in 1960. So I came here as a student in 1964. And really, I didn't know much about Britain except what I was being told when I was in the grammar school. The history we studied was about British history. Unfortunately, there wasn't much about Nigerian history or even African history. And that British history centered around well, a bit of slave trade and William Wilberforce. He was hailed as a hero, somebody who initiated abolition. But as I'm sure most of you know that it was the slaves themselves that initiated abolition. So I don't want to go into that. It's quite a history that I'm sure most of you maybe already know about. We've been celebrating slave remembrance here in Liverpool since 1992, when the first gallery was built. I was part of that. And then that started also, celebrating with what we call libation, where we remember ancestors. Today we remember ancestors. And tomorrow is Remembrance Day, because as you know, most Commonwealth citizens, millions of them died in the war, and nobody, well, not much is said about them. But of recent, we put some pressure on the authorities, and now allow us to lay reach here in Liverpool for those fallen heroes from the Commonwealth. So I came here in 1964, and of course when I came in here, things were totally different from what I knew. My first shock was seeing somebody in the streets, eating chips on his hands, and I thought, and somebody, emptying dustbins, and those things are things I thought, gosh, a white man shouldn't do that. So that was the impression I had. Anyway, so since then, of course, I've been involved well, I came in obviously when I came, things really weren't as much as I expected. I noticed some racism, but I think for me, it was something I took for granted. And because I thought this is the white man's land, and even in Africa where I was, the ex-colonial people, they were still there after independence, still treated Africans as second-class citizens. They had their own clubs, and those who served on those clubs were Black people who dressed in their white dress, and So anyway, so when I came here, there was a bit of that, but I didn't bother very much about it until it actually hit me. where I was looking for accommodation and I couldn't get it. And I couldn't get it because I was a black man. But there was a lady who really brought it home to me, and that was the late Dorothy Queen. That recently a lot has been celebrated about her legacy. As you know, she was such a committed activist of racism, the first resolutions of the Liverpool. It's just by chance I was walking along Mount Pleasant and I saw her. And she told me, "So where are you from?" And I explained to her, and then I told her my problem, the problem I had getting accommodation. And then, of course, she helped me, but in addition to that, she invited me to the race relations meeting. At that time, she was the secretary of the race relations council in Merseyside at the time. So she invited me. I was very young, I was a young man, very in my 20s. So, but when I got there, I saw elderly people, a lot of, I wasn't really very familiar with what they were talking about. I met later on, I identified as Ludwig Hesse, one of race, very prominent activists. Not much has been said about him, actually, which is really unfortunate. There were other people also, Rashid Mufti, who helped to form the Liverpool Law Center. Quite a few of these, most of them, they're all late now. I met them all, and then I started coming to the meeting, and gradually I began to realize what the whole thing was all about. So that's how I got involved in community activism. So I don't want to take much of your time. Windrush, I think, wasn't really something that I got to know about until recently, because most of the people I knew in those days, like somebody like Herbie Higgins from the Caribbean Center, is one of those who came, I think, by the Windrush. There was quite a few of them who I became very close and was involved in the formation of the Caribbean Center, which was a very vibrant center in those days, really vibrant. And I remember there's not a single month we don't celebrate one form of independence of the Caribbean Council, the Caribbean country. Liverpool was vibrant in those days, really. And despite the racism that persisted at the time, people were very, very close. Communities worked together. There was the Afro-Asian Caribbean Standing Committee where the Africans, the Asians, and the Caribbeans came together. Again, what brought them together is, again, racism in a sense. So so that's how I got involved in, and then, of course, I think my last involvement is with the slavery museum, which I mentioned about earlier. I think it was important that we knew the history of what happened hundreds of years ago. Those things were hidden. I think it's because of the shame and of what happened that they were hidden from us. And I think, as somebody mentioned earlier, I think it's important that our children know about our history. So I was, when that when Peter Moore decided to invest some money, I think £500,000 to set up that gallery, most of us were excited about it. unfortunately, it was some problems within our own community. There were some people who didn't really want to get involved in that, but I can understand because at that time, there was great unemployment among young people. There's still unemployment now among young people. And for somebody to come and invest £500,000, which people thought would be better used to create employment for young people, they thought, no, I can reason with them. But then on the other side of it, we needed to know history, because we need to know why we are what we are and how we became what we are. That's really important. And that was the driving force that made me get involved in the second of the slavery in Europe. So
a couple of points there.
again, if I keep going, I'll go on. But maybe later I might be saying more. But
yes.
It's nice, really. This concept of Windrush is really important. And unfortunately, many people here, it was publicized. I think the main thing is not many people are involved in that now, affected by it, because some of the people who are now here, latecomers, and those who probably would have been affected are no longer around. So
we'll find out.
That might be the reason anyway.
Thank you.
But anyway, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Chief, for that introduction. And I know your experience is very wide in terms of what's been happening in Liverpool over the period that you mentioned, from the 60s all the way through to 2023. There's a couple of things we just need to re-emphasize. So this event is specifically targeting Africans, and there's a good reason for that. And I will keep repeating that throughout the day. Because while I was in Kensington yesterday and spoke to a number of people, business people, hairdressers, barbers, shops, I asked about Windrush and they didn't know anything about Windrush. Only 2 persons from 33 that actually said, I saw something on the television about Windrush. So we know there's some ignorance out there among our community. And it's not just the African community, it's also the Southeast Asian community still hasn't got much knowledge about Windrush. So what we propose to do today is to provide you with some information that will allow you to think about whether your family and relatives are impacted by Windrush. A good place to start is really the background to Windrush. So if we pose that question about Windrush, most people believe that Windrush affected people who only travel on a ship because of the narrative. People arrive on the ship. Yes, that is correct. The first generation arrived on the ship, 1948, right? 1947, ship arrived in Liverpool so the journey of the mode of transport getting here to the UK is not important. I arrived on a plane. It's called BOAC, became British Airways. Yeah. So the mode of transport is of no consequence to how you arrive in the UK. What is important is some relevant dates that we're going to share with you throughout the afternoon as to when you arrive and what about your parents and grandparents. When did they arrive? So we're going to try and at least focus on the history. Grandparents, parents, and then yourself. And then your family generation. So I'm 2nd generation Windrush. My children Third, I have grandchildren. Fourth, and when they have their children, it will be the fifth generation. Okay? In order for us to understand Windrush, just keep your mind blank for a moment. Remove any idea that you have about Windrush. And let me take you on a journey. So, the ship arrived 1948, June 21st, Tilburg. It is said is June 22nd is Windrush Day. Correct. Because the day before, the 21st, they could not embark from the ship because of political issues. And the country didn't want these people to come here. So that was the reason why they spent an extra night on the ship. The next day, there was disembarked. And even though they were invited to come to the UK to rebuild the country after the Second World War, they had to pay their own passage, 28 shillings, I understand, 28 pounds.
Equivalent.
28 pounds each passenger paid to get here.
It's more for women.
Here you are, see, more for women. So they pay their passage to come to the UK. When they arrive in the UK, oh, the accommodation, sorry, you have to find your own. We have no anything to do. Where do we go? I lived in Clapham. And do you know the Windrush generation was in the bunkers there in Clapham? That was the only safety they found. They could stay on the ground. Okay? So that's why Lambeth became the local authority, okay, for Windrush. And in Brixton, we have Windrush Square, named after the generation. So they could not find any accommodation. When they tried to find accommodation, as Chief said, they see a sign. As soon as they walk up to the sign, they turn around, no vacancy. Every time they see a sign, vacancy, walk up, no vacancy, because the black face is coming. Yeah, we're all familiar with the sign: no Irish, no dogs, no blacks. Yeah, no Jews. So the first generation experienced direct racism, and they were invited to rebuild the country. And let's emphasize, this is very important. These are people who came with skills, skills, engineers, technicians, carpenters, skills to rebuild a country that was destroyed by the German Second World War. And yet still nowhere to live. The hostility started then for those people. So the first generation experienced hostility. The second generation, you would expect to be a bit better. Well, I'm second generation. I lived in Brixton on the front line, and I saw direct incidents with the police dealing with black people. Yeah. The sus laws, I see all of that. People pull out of their cars for no reason. Signs saying, go home. That was a reality, second generation, 70s. So in the 80s, we thought, okay, we had a race relation act, that should help, 1976. But still, people were experiencing discrimination in many areas: housing, employment, education, many areas. Okay? So that's been the experience of the Windrush generation and descendants. These sessions going to be focusing specifically around who is eligible for Windrush. Tanika, we have two issues to share with you. First of all, checking your status. We call it rectifying your status. We're going to explain what that means. So the Windrush scheme comprises of two components. status and compensation. The first bit is status. What is your immigration status? When we look at that, we can then examine whether you've been impacted, you've suffered loss because you could not provide the necessary evidence or papers to show you have the right to be here. It's almost silly because the Home Office destroy the evidence and then asks you to produce the evidence. Yeah, so, there lies a problem. So I'm going to ask Tanika just to speak firstly about status, because this is very important. Status is the very first step. Please, Tanika.
Thank you, Garrick. Thank you all. A lot of people will think, what is status? What nationality are you? Where were you born? That's the status you were given at birth. If you were born in the UK, that's not the case though. If you were born to Commonwealth parents in the UK, then you are Commonwealth, you're not British. Not like in America, if you were born in America and your parents are Commonwealth citizens, then you're American. The laws in the UK are different. And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't know that at the time. Between the period of 1948, when they first were invited over by the British government, but couldn't disembark, as Gareth said, to 1988, to everybody from all other countries, which were the provisions of the Windrush Act. Sorry, the Windrush Policies, Reroute, Triangle Windrush Act. It's in my head, my apology.
You've been reading my
Jamaica, Barbados, Ghana, Nigeria. What is your nationality? That is really important because
30, 40 years outside the UK. And this point about the experience at the British High Commissioner trying to get an appointment or even enter the building. Sometimes you couldn't even get to the building because the security will run you away. You wouldn't get to the building to go and make an application. So we're able to use a lot of information when we're challenging the Home Office to get that individual return. Thanks for that, Roland. I'll come back to you later on. So can you see the point? Although there are people outside the UK, there are still ways of getting them back to the UK because every individual case will be different. And that individual may have attempted several times to enter the British High Commission in their country to get a return and been pushed away. When Tanika mentioned the four status, and we mentioned the fact that people who were born in the UK can still experience problem, and that problem arises because of their parents, their mother or their father or their grandparents. Yeah, so that line will continue. Okay. We haven't tested this out in the High Court as to whether that can be overruled, because what the guidance note is saying, if you don't fulfill this criteria, this we call this eligibility. The Home Office produced this guidance to say anyone who needs to apply to the scheme, whether for status or compensation, you've got to follow this. And if within the eligibility criteria you don't fit, as I said, you'll be outside Windrush, then it's an immigration issue. And we're not going to be focusing on immigration issue, but we do have partners who are immigration specialists. So we could always, refer you on to an immigration specialist. But law, Liverpool Advocates for Windrush, and Justice for Windrush Generations, we do not provide immigration advice. We focus only on the Home Office compensation scheme. All the information we use is in the public domain, so you can get it yourself, gov.uk/Windrush compensation, it comes up. And the very first thing says about eligibility, just to check your eligibility. As I said previously, if you arrive after 1989, 1990, 92, 93, 2000, you're outside the scheme. Windrush doesn't apply to you. If you need any help, it will be immigration advice. So Windrush cannot fix your problem, right? It has to be within that period. Settle 1973, settle 1st of January 89 from any other country. Settle. That's what the Windrush scheme is about. Can I pause there?
Yes, before we go on to questions, can we just ask Chief to
Yes.
lead us into minutes of silence?
Yes.
In commemoration of
Yes, of course. So we appreciate today is the 11th of November. We know that at 11 o'clock, the 2-minute silence would have rung. We're going to do our 2 minutes now in respect of all our Commonwealth people that will be male and female who were served in the First and Second World War. We're going to just do a 2-minute silence of respect. Can I just ask you, because tomorrow you're going to be attending the memorial service. Okay? So if you just ask us to do the 2 minutes silence, please, then we will then follow you.
Yeah, ask
Yeah,
you to stand.
yeah, if you don't mind. Please stand.
Please stand, please. During the First World War, we lost millions of Commonwealth citizens. Their memory has not been acknowledged until recently. Liverpool is one of the only city that is a Commonwealth city. And the first thing we did was to strive to make sure that on Remembrance Day, we remember these millions of people who gave their lives for the king and country. So can we, as we stand, observe 2 minutes silence in their memory? May their souls and the souls of ancestors who lost their lives fighting for freedom rest in perfect peace. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. You'll notice that lunch has come into the room. We're just waiting for the second lunch to arrive. While we're waiting, I'm just going to ask Alex to come forward. On your mobile phone, if you have a smartphone, we have a questionnaire. If you notice on the sheet, there's a code. Yes? Can you just explain how they can actually do the questionnaire, whether from their mobile phone or on the web?
Yeah, so it's very important that we always approach this kind of issues from the point of data and information. So one of the things law is doing is to undertake a research that seeks to gather the lived experiences, some of the issues people have had with the Home Office. It is important to know that this information will be presented in the form of a report, but the report will be anonymous. No identifying information about you will be in the report. We want to be able to tell the Home Office or whoever gets this report, and this is what people are going through. This is some of the challenges. These are the barriers with the current structure that you have, and this is how we think can be made to work well. So on the leaflets, there are 2 codes. So one is colored. So the colored one is for the questionnaire. So what you do is to scan the QR code, which is in, what color is this? More like gold?
Yes, reddish, yeah.
Yeah, more like gold. Yeah, so you just scan that, the questionnaire will be on your phone, then you go through it. Roughly, it should take you about 15 minutes. Yeah, that is maximum 15 minutes. You can do it for less. So maximum should be like 15 minutes. You should be able to do that. Then during the break time, we will also be here. Perhaps you will want to have one-on-one conversations with us. I'll be around to listen to you. And like I said, everything that is recorded will be, identifying information will be attached so that we can come out with a comprehensive document that details the experiences, some of the difficulties people are going through with their compensation schemes and the rectification scheme. So thank you very much. If you have any challenges accessing the document, just alert me. We have alternative route to get the questionnaire on your phone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Appreciate that. And also, after today, you can still use the questionnaire. It's not just for today. Right? When you go home tomorrow, you can still access it. And even next week, you can still do it. It doesn't expire suddenly.
Yeah, so it will be open to the end of the year. Then we will do the analysis and everything from next year because it's very difficult identifying the Windrush generation and their descendants. So once you get access to it, you can also pass it on to someone if you know someone and pass it on in that. So we snowball it until it gets into the hands of many people. So we have it open till the end of the year. Then we will do the analysis next year. The report should be out roughly middle of next year.
Yes, can I just make a suggestion if you don't mind?
Yes.
Why don't we get this put up on L8, I'm thinking of L8 Facebook,
I have several.
and then, you know, so everybody can see it, and then just keep putting reminders on,
Yeah, that's good.
like little tag things.
Thank you.
And get it tagged and keep saying to people, have you filled it in?
Mhm.
Because you said it's right till the end of the year.
Yes.
And then how important this information is,
Thank
the
you.
survey, that it gets done, but one of the things, you have to keep tagging it
Yeah.
all the time.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Just before we break for lunch, what we've presented just now in the morning session, is there any question coming out of anything that we have presented that you need any clarification? If you want to speak to one of the advocates on an individual basis with a query about your own family situation, we can do that over lunch, quietly. But is there any general question that has come out of what we presented in relation to the status section and then to the actual scheme? This afternoon, we were breaking down individual to the actual scheme in terms of who's a primary claimant, who's a close family claimant, and also if somebody has passed on as a deceased person, right, the family member can still apply. So we have what is called a deceased claim. Yes? So we'll be drilling into that in more detail. First of all, the primary claimant, the person making the claim for themselves, then close family members, so that could be many people who was assisting that primary claimant, and then if the person that passed on and the family want to make that claim on behalf of them, that is called a deceased claim. So we're going to be focusing on those three areas this afternoon. Okay? So if you know, think about if any of that applied to you, then that session would be something to listen to. But also, as I said, during the break for lunch, we have 1 hour. Any question, please approach any one of us on a one-to-one if you have a specific query that you need an answer to, right? We'll do that confidentially down the back there, etc. That will be just you and the advocate having a conversation. Now, also, Alex has said he would like, we've got recorders here, which means we can capture what you have said, we can record it digitally, that will go into this report that's going to be compiled, right? So one of the things that is important for us to capture is your story, what has happened to you and your family. So I'm sure there's some story about that, and we want to capture that to show. And also, the difficulty of understanding Windrush and the whole process. We want you to tell us all of that on the digital recorder, because Windrush is not an easy thing to understand. And during our Sunday chats and also our Quest Q&A sessions, which happens twice a month on a Sunday.
The first and third.
The Q&A is the first and third, and there's Lee that actually tell us about that. And the Sunday chat is the second and last Sunday. So tomorrow, we have a Sunday chat. Now, your experience. If you don't know enough about your family situation, we still need to capture some of them, because that is important. If your family is deceased and you didn't know anything about that until today, tell us that. You need to capture that as well. If an individual has put a claim in 1 year, 2 years ago, you haven't heard anything, let us know. We want to know about that as well. So anything relating to the Windrush scheme, we want to know. During our Q&A and Sunday chat, we always emphasize this point. Not everyone can read the guidance note and do it themselves, make the application. That's exactly why we have advocates to help us with that process. So you read all this thing. The guidance note is 43 or 44 pages. You read it and think, I don't understand, I don't know what to do. Or it may be that you're not able to read it. So you need some help. That's the role of the advocates. After today, you still have access to this team. Doesn't stop today. So tomorrow, Monday, you bring the phone number. You want to talk directly, the advocates are here. So during the lunch session, please have a conversation with anyone here and raise any issue. But as I said, Alex would like to record some of those issues. It's important to know. Rhoda and myself, we know that people outside the UK are not getting this information that we're giving you. They're not getting it. The only time they get it when they join our Zoom on a Sunday for our Sunday chat. And we have an international Zoom where people come in and we explain it. They're not getting any information. The Home Office is not interested in those people overseas. But we are trying to reach those people through different platforms. So if you have family member overseas and you have a query what to do, come and talk to us. See if we can help you.
You wanted to say something? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, then
So-
one last thing.
Yeah.
So, I forgot to mention that whoever answers the questionnaire gets £5 voucher.
Yes, if you're
Yeah,
eligible.
thank
You're
you.
eligible.
Yeah, so whoever, clears the question.
It's a little incentive.
It's a little incentive, yeah. It's not a payment for your time, it's just an incentive.
Which means not just you will get it, but if you share that information for friends and family members to do the questionnaire, they will get the voucher as well.
Providing the voucher.
Yeah, if they're eligible. Because the questionnaire will determine whether that individual is eligible for the Windrush scheme or the outside Windrush scheme. You follow? Okay, so the questionnaire will indicate whether or not you're eligible, right? So let's just repeat, the questionnaire continues for the rest of the year. If you're not able to do it today, don't worry, you can do it tomorrow, you can do it next week. That's fine. Please share the information with friends and family. The QR codes are on our leaflet on the chairs. You can also visit, there's a QR code there. You can visit the website when you get a chance at home, quietly, and you have the information. So literally, it's on the landing page. As soon as you go in, you'll see. Okay. Now, I think that's, yeah, that's everything. Yeah. Yes. So we've got a couple of minutes for lunch, and a seat's here now. Any question before we break for lunch? Please.
I just wonder whether with all of this, within it, you've got system, I think you referred to that by saying having the questionnaire, whether for a legacy of the Windrush generation, we have an archive system. That's all I want.
Yeah, well, that's a good question.
I couldn't hear the question.
Yeah,
Keep this in mind.
you want to know whether that's going to be a legacy? Yes, for Windrush. There will be legacy. I want to explain something to you in a second. Just repeat the question so that everybody can hear.
Yes, as legacy of the Windrush generation, I would like to know that there'll be an established national archive. That everyone who's contributed to this country, the Windrush generation, we've built this country, and I want future generation to know that. So there should be an archive, and I've been in touch with my MP, and I'll tell you about it after.
No, please tell us about it
It's a good point about the National Archives, and it does exist. It's already here, so don't have to reinvent. You're from London, aren't you?
No.
Oh, who was from London? The lady in front of you. Okay, so in London, outside Windrush Square, we have the Black Archives, and inside there, we have a Windrush timeline and feature people like Sam King, who was a RAF pilot who came to the UK and then had to go back and come back on Windrush. There are several projects at the moment recording the history of Windrush. Several projects. Several research projects has been done, recording people live experience. One of our guest speakers next Tuesday in the House of Commons is Dr. Juanita Cox. And she has done a really interesting piece of research. The University of London Caribbean History Study Project. You can Google the name and you'll find. She has done extensive research on the Windrush generation. She has interviewed first generation Windrush. She's interviewed second generation Windrush. And she's interviewed third generation Windrush. Lots of different research projects already exist. There's also something new that we're trying to focus on, is about the mental health and the trauma that the Windrush generation continue to have, intergenerational trauma. Is another piece of research to look at that particular area, because we haven't got enough data as to how many people are suffering through trauma. And as a result of that, only this year, June 22nd, there was an article that highlighted the 1959 Mental Health Act that was used to remove many Black people from the UK. Google it and you will see. You will also see individuals who experienced that. So, but we haven't got enough of that material. We need more. And the only way we can get more is people telling their story. If people don't talk about it, we're not going to collect that information. So please share your story. And this is why Alex recording is so important, because it may well be that we have one or two stories from today relating to any of that as a starting point. Thank you.
To add to that, whatever data, whatever information that we collect from our questionnaire will also go to feed into whatever legacy that we are already building. So it will not be something in isolation. We will add everything and send it to the relevant museums to make sure that this information stays and stays.
Thank you very much. So I think I can stop talking now, right? Because I think people, people are hungry now. So we're going to have a break now for an hour. Lunch is here. We have a choice of lunch, so we have 2 different menus. And so over lunch, please have some conversation with any one of us about your situation, and we see if we can assist you. Okay, so for now, we close the morning session. Thank you very much. So, excellent. So we're ready now, geared up for afternoon. Just before we begin our afternoon session, I'm just going to have a quick recap of the morning session, some of the key elements that we discussed this morning. So first of all, we established the timeline for Windrush generation, 1948 to 1988. Then we also spoke about the timeline to be eligible for either status or compensation. So you need to be settled in the UK by January from a Commonwealth country, 1st of January 1973, either your grandparents, your parents, or yourself from a Commonwealth country. Remember that date, 1973. Then we spoke about other countries outside the Commonwealth. Similar, but the date is different. You need to be settled from any other country by the 1st of January 1989. Okay, so those 2 dates are important. We also mentioned the different category of status, and Danica mentioned 4. What we're going to do this afternoon, we're going to sort of focus on 3 main areas of the compensation scheme. First of all, the primary claimant. So who is a primary claimant to make a claim? Secondly, we're going to focus on close family members making a claim. And then thirdly, the deceased estate, the person from that family making a claim on behalf of the deceased person. Those are the 3 areas we're going to focus this afternoon. We hope to finish around 4 o'clock, 4:15, that sort of time. Okay. So, before I get into the afternoon session, we have a guest who's also a resident of Liverpool. You may recognize him. He's not playing Mr. Robeson today. His name is Teo. So can I invite Teo to come forward, introduce yourself as to who you are and what you do. We're going to have one piece from Teo, and then at the end of our session this afternoon, we're going to have a second piece from Teo. So Teo, please.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with you. I see I'm not the only token West African here. It's interesting. Okay, yes, my name is Tayo Aluko. I was born in Nigeria in 1962, and I arrived in England in 1978. It took me another 15 years or so to get a British passport to add to my Nigerian passport, which I once heard Ken Saro-Wiwa's son, referred to his Nigerian passport as a passport of inconvenience. So I've got one of those, but I've also got a British passport, which has allowed me to travel around the world quite freely for as long as I don't become an enemy of the state, which I believe I'm on the way to becoming because of my activism on behalf of Palestine. But that is not what we're here to discuss. Yes, I used to be an architect, and I became a professional actor in 2009, I believe. And I've been touring with 2 plays now. The second of which is called Just an Ordinary Lawyer. And it uses the life of Britain's first black judge, who was a Nigerian, who was passionate about cricket, to look at black liberation struggles worldwide through the eyes of somebody who is not really into politics, he just wants to sing and watch cricket. But it's a very political play. And there's a part of the play in which his name was Tunji Showande, uncle of Femi Showande, who some of you may know. And there's a part of the play where he says he's got out of a marriage, an unhappy marriage in Nigeria, and comes to London to start studying law. But he just imagines, I would at last be able to watch cricket, enjoy music and watch cricket. I'll visit the great grounds that I had read and heard as a boy. The Oval, Old Trafford, Trent Bridge, Headingley, Edgbaston, and Lords, the home ground of the MCC and the home of cricket. I would at last be able to watch international teams like England, New Zealand, South Africa, Pakistan, the West Indies. The West Indies. My mother said to me as I was leaving, Malo Fajerike, please don't marry an Ajerike. Ajerike means sugarcane eater. We saw them as children of slaves, you see, not appreciating the fact that sugar was a crop that they had been enslaved to grow. But I knew better. Why? Because they were great cricketers and often held their own against the likes of England, New Zealand, and Australia. And so in that respect, at least they were as good as anybody else. So that's one of the things that I tackled in the play, the kind of internal racism that we have, that has been put upon us as African descended people. So, is that enough of an introduction?
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much.
All right.
We're going to be hearing from Tayo again, but that's a good introduction into the life of this man. He says he was an architect, and I know this. He trained as an architect, but he couldn't get a job in Liverpool as an architect. So this is now his career as a playwright, and he visit different country with his play. So again, life experience. Thank you very much, Tayo, for that. I said that we're going to focus now, this afternoon, a little deeper into the understanding of making application to Windrush. This morning, we established who's eligible to apply. And again, this is important. I will keep repeating this. The Home Office produced guidance notes for application. The first guidance note is to check your eligibility, which we spoke about years ago, being settled here. But then after you've done that, we then need to look at some other matters. So this afternoon, I'm going to try and help you to understand what it means to suffer loss or to be impacted by Windrush. In other words, impact what has happened to you. And I will give you some examples. So we're going to focus on 3 areas. Firstly, the primary claimant application process. That's the person who's eligible, making the application for themselves as the primary claimant. And then we're going to focus on the close family members who's supporting the primary claimant. And then towards the end, we will then talk about the deceased estate. So somebody who was eligible to apply, but they died without making the application, and another family member is now making the application on their behalf. That's the deceased estate application. Okay, so we're going to break that down into those areas specifically. The first thing we need to understand with Windrush, I keep repeating, there is guidance for everything. There is guidance for the primary claimant, so you would need to consult the guidance, read it through several times. You may not understand all of it, but you still have to read it through. If you don't understand the guidance, then this is where our team comes in terms of what support we can offer for you to understand the guidance and to make the application. So that's the role of the advocates. Here we are, law. That's the role of the advocates helping you to make that application. Now, we have to get the information from you, the individual. And the information is locked in your head for the last 30 or 40 years, what you've experienced. When we start talking to you, we're going to start to take you back to situation back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, etc. Some of that information may be triggering. Yes, you may not like that because there was a really bad experience. That's precisely the reason why we have Jeanette Francis to assist individual with trauma counseling. So somebody will be there to assist and support you while you're telling your story so that it can be written down. Sometimes it have to be recorded and then played back and typed out. That will be your story, your experience. Everybody have got a different story. So we cannot make assumption that it's all going to be the same. Some individual may have experienced detention coming through the airport, taken into a room for an hour and questioned before they're allowed to come through custom and clear. Some individual may have spent time in a detention center, locked up for a period of time. Some individual may have lost their employment suddenly, and they didn't know why. Some individual would have lost their house, their mortgage, because of losing their employment. And they didn't understand why. The employer just suddenly come and say, sorry, we have to let you go. And there's a good reason for that. So I'm trying to get you to think about your different situation that may have happened to you and your family. And if you've not suffered anything, then there is no claim to be had. If you have suffered, then there is a claim to be had. So what does it mean if you've suffered loss? Tanika, just name. Let's just run through a few things, scenarios, which shows that you've suffered. I've mentioned detention coming through the airport. I mentioned the fact that you may have lost your employment. I mentioned the fact that your mortgage, your housing would have been lost through your employment. But there are other things. Banking, yes? Your bank account been refused. Getting housing, access to housing. You couldn't get housing. What about your children not able to get a grant to go to university? What about access to the NHS services? Those are a few examples of loss, suffer. Are there any others that we need to mention?
Yes, I'm just gonna put it up on the slide. My computer.
So what we're trying to show that as a Windrush person or descendant, we have been impacted. We have suffered. And the reason why we say impact and suffer, because you are asked to produce evidence to show that you have the right to be in the country, but you could not show that. You didn't have the necessary document to show that you had the right to be here. And it may well be that that document that you need to show is the same document that the Home Office has destroyed. And now they're asking you to produce evidence that you should be here. So we know that from paper copy to digital, the Home Office did something. I think it was reported once that there was a fire that destroyed the document. Whether that is true or not, I don't know. Right? But the Home Office had originally all the landing cards for the first generation, had a record, but they destroyed them. Yeah. So now they're asking you to prove to us you have the right to be here. And that may be the reason why when your employers suddenly come to you after working for 10 years and say to you, I need to see documentation. Because the government, the Home Office, had introduced a piece of legislation to say employer must make checks. We must check to see if you have the right to be here. And if you could not produce the document, I'm sorry, but let you go. That's how people lost their job. That's how they lost their house. That's how they lost their bank account. And it spiraled. And their children, same thing. So if none of that has happened to you, then you've not been impacted. But if one or two of those has happened to you, you've been impacted. We always stress this point. Coming through the airport at immigration, if you're detained for more than 30 minutes, that is detention. You can put that on your application and you will be awarded something for that period. 35 minutes being detained into a room. You've got a Jamaican passport or a Nigerian passport, and they said, excuse me, sir, can I just take you over here? And you're there 30 to 45 minutes being questioned. You've been detained. So only in conversation that people remember these things as we start to talk to them about their experience. And also, some family members don't know that has happened to their family because the family has not said to them, this is what happened. They just kept it quiet. Okay? So it's good to have conversation with your family members so we know what is their experience as well as your own experience. Just give me, okay, so here we have employment, immigration fee, housing, health, education, driving license, banking, daily life, for example, you miss major family events or you could not travel, detention and removal, living costs, for example, rent, utilities, contribution towards food, household essential, travel, and prescription fees. Yeah, can you see? Here we are. Fees, detention, loss employment, loss of benefit, inability to access NHS, banking, homelessness, impact on life. Here we go, the trauma, the impact on life, discretionary payment, living costs, non-financial remedies. I hope that will help you to think about what it means to suffer loss or being impacted as a result of not able to prove your status because you haven't got a document. In other words, you came as a child, for example, at 7-year-old. You've grown up as a man, so you never had a passport. But the question is, what about your parents? Did they have a passport? What was their status? We spoke about that this morning. So, here we are, primary claimant. They've read through the guidance, and now they think, okay, I have had a number of these issues. I'm going to make an application. How do I do it? How do I begin this process to make the application as a primary claimant? You can download the application from the Home Office website. You can also request a hard copy, paper copy, sent to your home address. There's 2 ways you can get it. The most important thing is what you put on this application. It is our experience that when an individual tries to do it themselves and put certain things on the application, and when the Home Office look at this application and read it and conclude that this person hasn't suffered any loss. And it may well be the person hasn't provided enough information as to what has happened to them. So whatever is written on the application is the only thing the Home Office will go by. They don't know what's going on in your head, who did. They only go by what you put on the paper. That is why it's so important that what you put down is an accurate description of your situation. And if you need help with the advocates to help you to put it down, then that is the role of the advocate, to talk with you, several conversations, hours of conversation, to get your story out of your head and put it down on the application around how you've been impacted by Windrush. Contrary, if you've not been impacted, you don't need to go any further. Doesn't apply. So if you're impacted, and we remember this morning when Tanika spoke, we said status, check your status. Yeah. And then after checking your status, the next thing is whether or not you are eligible for compensation or for any payments. And on that paper, what has happened to you? So a number of those, what has happened to you will go towards what is your compensation going to be about. Now, Tanika, just give an example of the conversation that you have as an advocate when you are assisting somebody. What are some of the questions you ask them?
With regards to compensation?
Yeah, to putting on paper. What are they going to put on paper?
So first I need to ascertain, going back from what I said earlier, when you arrived in the UK, what was your status? If you came here as a visitor and you overstayed, or you came here through some other route where you did not have a right to settle here, stay here, or right of abode, then we can't go any further. There's no point going any further because you won't be eligible. If we were to go further, it will be a waste of your time and mine, and the Home Office would simply reject your claim. In addition to that, you simply be, in my opinion, identifying yourself and saying, well, hey, Home Office, I'm here illegally, deport me. You know, so I'll just advise you that unfortunately you're not eligible under the claim and we can't proceed further with your application.
And that's very good. Just pause there. We know it is the experience of many, many people in this city who will not come forward, and in other cities, but we're in Liverpool, so let's talk about Liverpool. They will not come forward because they know in themselves they haven't got the right to be here, because they may have come here under a visitor status which expired. They may have come as a student life finished, expired. And so they're thinking, if I come forward, then I'm going to be identified that I haven't got the right status. And then the next step, red flags, immigration office alert, I will be removed. Okay? So that is why it's important just to check who is eligible. Keep going back to this point. Who is eligible? What year did you arrive in the UK? And have you got a settled status? Commonwealth must settle by 1973. Any other country by 1989, settled. That's the criteria for status, and that will also be the criteria going to move on to compensation, providing you've suffered loss. So the primary claimant application starts with your personal details, name, address, etc., all the personal details. We keep repeating this on the Sunday chat every time. Whatever name is on your registered birth certificate, that is name you copy on the application. If you're known by another name, then there's a space to put that name. Do not put the name that your mother or grandmother been calling you from birth, etc., but is not on your birth certificate. because the Home Office will just, that person doesn't exist. Okay? So just use information on your birth certificate. And also the exact spelling. If there's a variation of one letter incorrect, the Home Office will say it's not you. Okay? Exact spelling. Okay? So you've got the application, you start to fill in, and the most difficult bit is when you're going to explain what has happened to you, the impact, and that's the bit that the advocates will help you to tell them, so we can get the correct information on paper. So an individual may suffer many losses. If you lose your job, that's a spiral to many things. You become homeless. You lost the ability for income, so you have no money, your bank account's gone, you can't pay your bills. So you may have to live with somebody as a friend, a family member, as a homeless person, living on their settee in their front room because there's nowhere for you to go. But you can't be on the street otherwise. So, you know, just losing your job after 20 years in the NHS is a spiral to everything. And we have real experience of individual advocates who have worked in the NHS for 20 odd years and lost their job, and they spiral to that, affecting the entire family. So that's about the primary claimant. And as I said, the primary claimant is the individual making the claim who says, I'm eligible to make the claim. That's the individual, primary claimant. Other people that might be involved, we'll talk about them separately. But that individual making the claim, the Home Office look at this application and they will assess this application, as I said, based on the information on the form. That is why we ask people, let's have a look at your application, because we might be able to advise you and say, okay, there isn't enough information here. So you need to add something, you just explain this. That's the role of the advocate, to help you, to get the maximum from your claim. And when we say the maximum, we have claims, you can read this for yourself on the Home Office fact sheet. We have claim of 50,000, we have claim of 70,000, we have claim of 100,000, we have claim of between 100 and 150,000, right? It's all there. How many claim to those values? It's out there in the public domain. There is also a minimum claim. So, Tanika, tell us about a minimum claim, the first offer that the person may get.
That's the initial payment of £10,000. So the Home Office will assess your application upon receipt. If they think you may be entitled to some financial award, but they can't ascertain how much exactly, probably because they need more evidence, or they're waiting to see how, for example, an injury, the end result of said injury, but you're going through it as a result, they'll wait for the conclusion of when they can have a definitive figure, but they'll offer you preliminary award, which is known as £10,000.
So you get the initial £10,000 while gathering more evidence as to see what else. So you don't have to accept the offer, the initial offer. What happens if you say no to the offer? We don't take 10,000.
You could say no, you're entitled to do that. But my question to you would be, on what grounds are you saying no? Are you going to then make a counter offer to them and say, well, I don't accept this because I think my injuries or what I've suffered is worth more, and I think I should get £15,000 instead, for example, or 20 or whatever. So that would be a counter offer. Is that what you're going to do, or are you just going to say no and I need more, without giving them a reason why you need more, without providing the evidence to support your argument why you need more, why you deserve more, or you're entitled to more. So just saying no is not the best approach.
Good.
Have a reason for saying no.
So having a reason is debate about evidence. So if the Home Office require evidence from you, you have to provide that evidence. So you would need to say, okay, on this date, I lost my job on the 1st of January 1975, 80, whatever, lost your job. The company may have gone, disappeared now, they don't exist anymore. So there is no record that you can find to say, I was working for Alcan Company or, Marks and Spencer, whatever the company is. They no longer exist. But there is one way we can establish whether you were working for that year and where you were working through HMRC. Right? So everybody who have worked in this country and paid tax and insurance, we can establish that they were employed. Yeah? We can also establish when the tax and the insurance stopped being taken. Okay? So there we are, as some evidence. Some people find it difficult to collect evidence for other things. But as a lawyer, and see, I turn to the right, I always have to do this because I'm not a lawyer. As a lawyer, Tanika will ask then, right, you say this on your application, but how are you going to support this? Just say something about evidential burden of proof.
I'm not a lawyer as yet.
The principle, yeah.
Principle, just getting that clear. But as my partner said, I argue like one. So there's that. In our opinion and experience, the evidential burden is great. We've recently celebrated 75 years of the Windrush boat coming to Tilbury. I went to the shop last night, bought a bunch of stuff. I don't think I still have the receipt today, and it's less than 24 hours. Much as 75 years ago, and they want applicants, our grandparents, great-grandparents, parents, to find evidence to say, well, they came here, they were working legally based on the government, the British government's invitation, to find things that don't exist anymore, that they themselves don't even have. When we do a subject access request, which is basically us saying to the Home Office, I would like all the immigration information you have on this person from either a specific period, which they'll ask you if you want a specific period, or for that person's entire life, from the time they got to the UK, whatever immigration records they hold. Oh, sorry, our records only go back to 1985. Hold on, the book came in 1948. The Immigration Act 1973, which started this, well, there were others, but the main one, 1973, which is before 1985. But you still want these people to evidence that they were here then? But then recently, the ex-Prime Minister Theresa May, in her memoir, said that the hostile environment only started in 2007. And it's only from 2014 and onwards, the legislations then are the one that has severely impacted the Windrush generation. I'm confused. I don't know if anybody else is. But now they have the Windrush policies, and the policies are giving you all this information in addition to what I said. You have to work your way through all that, then make the applications and hope that it's good enough. But in my opinion, when you compare it to the other schemes that they have out there, the Hong Kong scheme, the Ukrainian scheme, the EU scheme just after Brexit, which is recent also, because it's kind of working 2018. Brexit was a 2020, 2021?
Yes. Yeah.
They have more favorable terms in those policies, very simpler. They even have a EU app. Windrush doesn't have that. I make mention of those to say that the schemes are complicated and convoluted, created in a way, in my opinion, that's particularly difficult for people to navigate. If you really wanted to right the wrongs, as was said, why all of that theatrics, in my opinion? So the evidential burden is great. You have to prove everything you say. It's not okay to just say, well, I came here, I was discriminated against, or I was bullied, or I experienced racism. The schemes do not care about that. Whether you were discriminated or that you experienced racism, that's not what they make. One, grant you status rectification for, or give you compensation for. What they do is if you significantly suffered because you could not prove that you had a right to be in the UK, you can prove that you were a citizen of the United Kingdom and colonies where you weren't subject to any immigration control and you had indefinite leave to remain. You had the right to abode. Essentially, like you came on your parents' passport, you came here when you were 2 years old. So you didn't have a passport in your own right. 16, 17, you're going for a job, you don't have a passport because you never needed one. You're here with your parents. Oh, you don't have a right to work here. You don't have a right to be here. I do. I came with my parents. I came here as a child. This is all I know is home. You're not British. You're wherever you come from still. And instead of being able to register, as Patrick said earlier, when you could have registered up to 1984, I think he said earlier, now that's not an opportunity. You have to naturalize, which means you're alien. That's, I think, the Alien Act.
Yes.
It's complicated, it's convoluted, but the point is that you're not British until you go through a certain process, and even then, we're still deemed as aliens.
Just pause for a moment. You said something, and it may be useful for people in the audience. If you want to find information about a family member, there's certain information you need to find that information. I want Tanika just to repeat. So if you do access search, just tell them what you need to actually do that, please.
You subject access request through the Home Office, you need to provide ID and documents to say that, for me as an advocate, for example, I have to get your authority to do it on your behalf. So I have to get you to sign a form of authority to say, well, I'm acting on your behalf, you gave me that permission, and they can release such records, which is your data, to me, and I can access and go through, see the information I need from there to help you. You can do it for yourself also, but they'll need you to prove who you are. You say who you are. And they will check your records. A perfect example of this is that I have a client, and it's a Windrush claimant. I say clients. And the person clearly was here in the 70s. Passports, vignettes, bank records, NHS records, doctor's records, children had their own house here, worked at the bank actually. Everything to evidence that we're here legally, had rights of abode. They then left for more than 2 years, going back because of husband's health reason, which I mentioned earlier, different people, different reasons to leave. Try to come back a few years later, they had to come up on a visitor's visa because they stayed out of the country for more than 2 years. After having all of that, they didn't bother to naturalize or register because, oh, I have a right to be here. I'm okay. You know, I have all these things. It doesn't matter. It did. And after today, 2023, from 70s, they're still outside and still stuck outside and they can't get back permanently. So now they're trying to go through the returning resident route. Go ahead.
I was just going to talk about categories of claim and evidence. Through the Liverpool Black History Research Group and LA Facebook, we've come across photographic evidence of numbers of Black women, in particular, that worked in factories like Birdseye, the Birdseye factory in Claydon, which is now closed, Plessings, which is now closed, and a lot of these women, Black women, all worked in these factories. And what we're finding now, because a call went out just on Facebook, and we're seeing photographs now of numbers of these Black women that worked.
What we're finding now through the Black History Research Group and LA Facebook, photographic evidence of Caribbean women that came here in the 70s, worked in Plessings, Birdseye, my cousin was one of them. Meccano, that used to be Open Speak. Most of these factories, and the reason why, Caribbean, because they used to do shifts, they used to do like 6 o'clock in the morning,
you had to be there. And then they used to do a night shift as well. So what I'm saying, what I'm asking you is, if there is photographic evidence of women and there's factory photographs of them.
In some way, I can answer some of that, but I would like to hear what Kadika said, because a photograph doesn't give you the identity of the individual that we're referring to. It may give you some information. What we need is the individual named person that the evidence relates to. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, in addition to what you've asked and what I've said, this person had their passport that they came to the UK on, the CUKC passport, with their photograph, with their name written on, because it used to be handwriting then. And it still was not enough. When I did the subject access request, the Home Office sent me back 5 years of record of the person's travel from 2023 back to 2018. Nothing from 1973, even though that's the evidence we had to submit to say, well, here the person was clearly here. This is the person's ID now, because you have to provide ID when you're making a request. And still I have nothing. So what do we do as advocates? What can we do as advocates? Who do we turn to? Our MPs. That's our next step.
But surely if that person,
Here you go.
no, I'll stand up. Surely if that person who's making that claim is identified in that work photograph, that's the point I'm making.
Yeah.
Isn't that sufficient evidence?
We'll take that away with us.
You
Because,
think that,
yeah,
one
we-
second, Garrett, you think it's sufficient evidence, and I agree with you, just like me having a passport in my hand saying, well, here it is, the date is stamped, everything showing entry, no exit, everything, you think it's sufficient evidence, and that's our argument, like you, but it seems not to be. So what do we do? What can we do?
And then the other thing, thanks for that, Nika. The other thing, in our minds, we might be thinking we suffer 45 years of lost impact. However, you will not get 45 years of compensation. So don't be thinking that. Because the compensation scheme is designed in such a way that, and again, Tanika mentioned evidence. If you put something on paper that you cannot prove, it will be discarded. Okay? So we tend to focus on what we can prove. Because what we can't prove is always going to be an issue. Okay? So that's the important thing. I just want to pause there for a moment, because we start to look at the primary claimant and some of the issues affecting the individual who have suffered loss, who now believe that they can make the application, and they've started to make the application on paper, and they submit the application. Our conversation with the Home Office is telling us 6 to 8 weeks you get a response from the Home Office that we've received your application. It doesn't mean it's going to be processed. We received it. The actual processing period, when they're assessing your application, will take much longer. There are some applications outstanding now for 18 months, still hasn't been processed. There's also, when the Home Office require more information, that's another delay for your application. So you could submit an application, it could take 2 years to actually process and make a decision. Okay? Again, if you submit application through the appropriate means, like an advocate, etc., then we have the ability to keep on checking with Home Office about the application. Okay? And if necessary, give them a kick up the whatever. So, when people do it themselves, there's always an issue. And we don't know if what they put on the application is correct or is enough evidence. So let me start with primary claimant. Just put the end of that.
Okay, just come in. Okay, that's fine, yeah.
So I've done the primary claimant. We said that there are two other categories. So we got deceased estate and we got close family members application. So the close family is one that support the primary claimant. And there could be many of those, can't be just one person. Family members could be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we talk about deceased. So we're going to do the other way around. So if somebody has died, passed away, who was eligible for the scheme because they fulfilled the appropriate residency, you were here at a particular time, you came here, you had settled status from a Commonwealth country before 1st of January 1973, or you come from any country outside Commonwealth by the 1st of January 1989. So it's the same eligibility criteria for each. A family member now wants to make an application because their father or mother has passed. And they're allowed to do this. Again, we have guidance notes to explain the process. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to invite Roland Ozen from Justice for Windrush Generation. And we're going to focus now on the deceased estate. And it will make sense when we then talk about deceased estate, about close family members. So Roland. Okay, yeah. How much time have you got, Patrick? You're going to be leaving shortly?
10 minutes or 15 minutes.
Okay, 10 minutes. Yeah, good, good. So that run nicely because I don't want to lose you before you go, you see. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just bring Patrick up. We're going to do a piece of poetry for us, yes? And after Patrick, I'm going to introduce Roland to talk about deceased estate, yes? So Patrick, would you mind if you come up because you've got to go? Just give us one of your poetry piece, please, before you depart. And this morning, Patrick introduced to us a couple of things. Spoke about Mary Seacole, but also he spoke about being Black and proud, a piece that he did back for the museum in 2007, I think it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Patrick? Yeah.
I'm not going to repeat that piece, Patrick Lane. What I'm going to do is just a quick little chat, just to top up what's been said, not going on about the Windrush, but just basically that extension, what I see as Black history. Black History Month, which we all know is celebrated in October, but for me, Black history, for all of us, Black history is 365 days a year, and goes back as far back as, you know, thousands of years, basically. You know what I mean? One of the a key figure for me in Black history is a man who was called the first multi-genius, a man called Imhotep, who's the architect and designer of the first step pyramid with Pharaoh Zoser in Egypt. And he lived basically 3000 BC, so that's almost 5,000 years ago. You know, he was a scientist, he was an astronomer, he was an architect, a mathematician, a medicine man, he was everything. I would say his first multi-genius, and there's been several people like that over the years. So much more history, but basically, I just want to do two little poems which not very much related, well, are us related in that sense. First one is called Shrouded in Darkness. You heard the one about Black history. You know, it's surrounded in mystery. I'll tell you a little bit of white history, or quite plainly, a lot is surrounded in controversy. Just before the Middle Ages, you had the Knights of the Crusaders in search of good without bad. But what they did was wicked and mad. Not forgetting the mystery to us, how America, supposedly discovered by Columbus. He went in search of them without a care. In the end, arrested for holding out his share. After that,
The West using people commercially began the start of African slavery. They robbed us, raped us, and tortured us, robbed our land, leaving us dust and sand, raped our mind, making our conscience blind, tortured our women, turned our men to kill them. Blacks in history, as I say, and Europeans know we had a part to play. White history has talked out loud, something to make them feel wanted in a crowd. So why can't our history be taught by a classroom teacher instead of being hidden under a darkened shroud so black people can be just as proud? Thank you. This poem was written for an incident that sparked a global protest just over 3 years ago. And although it was in America, I would say it started a global protest because it resonated with people, black, white, of every nationality around the world. And the poem is called Knee Deep for 8 minutes, 46 seconds. A burden, the pain, the names, discrimination, and being hated from a child for all our years, walking around carrying the weight of unfounded people's fears. It's so hard, and some make it so obvious, something most of us have sussed, simple things like walking in a shop and being treated with mistrust. Stopped by the police when you've done no wrong, but then at times they can make up a lie, and in so many cases this has caused a black person to die. Right here in the city, Mazay, his memory will never be gone. His family still without justice as he was left for dead on the floor of Liverpool 1. The police the world over say they do not wish to cause a fatality. Then why is it they're allowed to even condone this persistent brutality? This is not just about George Floyd, who we've seen how evil and cruelly he died. 8 minutes, 46 seconds, a catalyst for the struggle from the pain in which he cried. The tears of women and children we see all too often, but then men are reduced to crying. The world has to stop and put an end to black people dying. What do we want? Change. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? Change. And when do we want it? Now. George Floyd was murdered for being black, with the whole world to see his last words, I can't breathe. That could easily have been you or me. To name just a few, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Tamar Rice, that's man, woman, and child. For being black, murdered by the police force that's far too wicked and wild. We have protests all over from the Americas, New Zealand, Belgium, Germany, Kenya, Ghana, as well as France. Other countries too, the world having enough, and now it's time to take a stance. Those who say all lives matter, like we are trying to deceive, deny that black lives matter. Black lives are the ones in danger. Is that so hard to believe? Black lives are under constant threat of abuse, even the threat of death from the racists. So people, we all come together to protest, to stand up and to resist. The world, and right here in Britain, Boris tells you, your BMPs and in the USA tell you Trump, your KKK, the time is up because the people and the protests are here to stay. Thank you.
Patrick. A big hand to Patrick, please. Thank you very much. Let's just bring it back to the reality of daily living in the UK. This is the reality of living, not just in the UK, but across the world, people's experience. Just before we go into the other two sections, Tanika has put something on the board. Returning residents. Part 1, Section 2 of the Immigration Act 1973 state that foreign nationals who were ordinary residents in the UK on the 1st of January 1973 and deemed to have settled status, indefinite leave to remain or indefinite leave to remain, ILR. People who lost the status in the UK after 2 years overseas, remember we mentioned that, 2 years on 1 day, there were individuals left UK for more than 2 years, their settled status, IRL, would have been lapsed. when it says lapse, it's gone. It's gone, you can't get it back. However, this means that they lost the right to live in the UK and would have needed to make a new application in order to return to the UK. You should not award compensation for impact or losses experienced because
That was significant. That was from the case board for guidance.
oh, I see, yes. So you notice this point, that the Home Office is saying you should not award compensation for impact or losses experienced because of a person no longer held lawful status in the UK. So this is what the Home Office people were processing. That's what they would say. Okay?
That's the guidance they use.
Yes, so they use that guidance to determine whether a person who have lost that can ever get it back. Okay? Now, we know this morning, Roland mentioned somebody who was returned. Roland?
All right, so I'll make a quick point. Before the 22nd of January last year, you could claim for the returning resident visa as well as compensation. And I know a few individuals who were compensated. A couple family from Nigeria. January 22, they said there's a new interpretation, and the 2-year rule, as always, applied to Commonwealth citizens. Prior to that, they said it did not. And as they were compensated victims are those who lost their definite leave to remain as of them being out of the UK for more than 2 years. Okay? So that's one.
And that's a good point, because one of the things that we're doing, Justice for Windrush Generation, we're campaigning in Parliament to get changes and improvement to the scheme. We've been doing this since 2021. Next Tuesday, the 14th of November, we're in Parliament, and we're pushing to get changes to the narrow scheme at the moment. And we have had some improvement to the scheme by pushing the Home Office through various means, but it's still not where we would like the scheme to be. So we will continue to make these issues and to continue with our bi-monthly, every 2 months rally in Parliament. It's also good for you individually to write to your own individual MP, whoever they are, doesn't matter what political party is, write to them and raise concern about the Windrush scheme and the way the scheme is dealing with people. Raise those concerns. If we have those concerns in writing, it will help the case. But if we keep quiet and don't say nothing, then they will just continue to do what they're doing. So please use your MP to say, please, I'm not happy with the Windrush scheme. This issue. Why is it that, we're treating Commonwealth citizens like this? Why are we treated different? And it was mentioned this morning, Canadian, Commonwealth, New Zealand, Australia, all the white Commonwealth countries they don't experience this. From 2 years, it jumped to 5 years. So they allow 5 years. So we're trying to get everything on the same par. Why can't we have 5 years instead of 2? So please write to your MPs and stress that they are discriminating against Commonwealth, particularly color of skin, skin color, because we see that with the white Commonwealth countries. So let me just say for the next bit, I'm just going to quickly just speak about deceased estate and then bring in close family members application process. Because there is no difference between a deceased estate application and a primary claimant application. You both have to show that you are or you were living in the UK by these dates, 1st of January 1973 or 1st of January 1989. You both have settled status in the UK before the person died. We're going to say, yeah, that's a point that I'll bring it. Yeah. So don't forget, there are no difference between the primary claimant and the deceased estate. However, what I said is a criteria. You have to fulfill that criteria as when you're settled in the UK. Okay? Those dates are important. However, we know there are different experiences of people who are trapped outside the UK, can't come back. The process of making an application outside the UK is slightly different. We're reaching out to people on the Zoom platform, right, on a Sunday chat, to help them to understand the eligibility criteria and how to make an application. Some of these people haven't got access to the internet, for example, to download application, but we still are able to assist them. And there are ways that we can get the information from the individual in those countries by contacting us on our email address or our WhatsApp telephone, and then we can communicate with that individual. And Roland been doing a lot of that, communicating with people from outside the UK. And there's also another means how to connect to the internet from outside the UK and still use the 0800 number that is on the Home Office sheet. We'll tell you about that before we finish. Bye, Patrick. So, primary claimant, deceased estate, no difference. I want you now to focus on something different. I'm going to invite our guest speaker, Roland Housen from Justice for Windrush Generation, to focus on close family members. And he will explain, when you say close family members, we're not talking about one person or two persons. He will explain there could be a number of people supporting that individual. Roland, can I bring you forward, please? So we're going to focus now on close family members making an application to support the primary claimant who made the application. And we'll see how that relationship between the primary claimant and the close family members is established and continued. Please.
Okay. Yes, I hope you've got a good enough understanding now about the primary claim and the deceased estate. As Gary said, it's very important that you understand this before you start thinking about making a close family member claim. There is absolutely no difference between a close family member claim and a deceased estate claim. No difference between not close family member. No difference between the primary claim and the deceased estate. None at all. Except that individual that was eligible as a primary claimant is now deceased. Okay, need to understand that. Now, in order to go through to make the deceased estate application, there are a number of forms that need to be filled out. It's the next of kin or the executor of the estate that will make the deceased estate claim. Number of forms that need to be filled out. It may have to go through probate, etc., etc. If, especially when there is no will. The Home Office will pay, or the Windrush scheme will pay up to £1,500 for legal costs, lawyers, etc., for doing the probate. Okay? I don't think time will permit for me to go into the detail of the deceased estate claim. Close family member claim. You can make a claim as a close family member if you are a close family member of a primary claimant or a deceased individual who would have been eligible as a primary claimant had they not passed. When we say close family member, there is a specific group of individuals we're talking about. It's not your great grandma, your great grandfather, your great grand uncle, or anything like that. It's a specific group. And the specific group is as follows. One, wife or husband of the deceased individual or the primary claimant, parent, children, sibling, and anyone that has lived with the primary claimant in a relationship, so to speak, while that individual was going through the issues. Also, a close family member need to be living in the UK at the time when that individual was going through their issues. Doesn't matter now if they're outside the UK. Now, at this point, at the point when the application is being made, as long as when the individual was going through their issue, they were in the UK, the close family member was in the UK. We always say, as soon as you start thinking as a primary claimant that you planning to submit a claim, it's very important that you, one, start speaking to other potential close family members. So if your 5 brothers and sisters, you need to siblings, you need to be speaking to each other. If that individual has got brothers and sisters as well, then with your aunts and uncles, and you are the children of that individual that has passed, you need to be speaking to your aunts and uncles, because them being brothers and sisters of the primary claimant or the deceased individual, they may have information that you may not have. And it's at this point, especially when it comes to close family member claim, I say this. In many families, you've got that one individual, not all, that appoint themselves as the family lawyer. They're gonna be the family accountant and everything else. And any and everything has got to come through that individual to the detriment of themselves, especially when it comes to the close family member claim, and the detriment of everyone else. So I'm talking, you're going to need death certificate of the individual. The Home Office does not going to take it that this individual is deceased. That individual will be sailing around the Caribbean on a cruise. So they're going to need evidence that this individual is deceased. So sharing of information, sharing of documentation, sharing of evidence is very, very important. And as I go along, you understand why. Scenario. Let's say father went to Nigeria on holiday. When father was coming back before he deceased, he was stopped at the airport for 45 minutes, taken into the room. Why have you got a Nigerian passport? You've been here 25 years, you got indefinite leave to remain, etc., etc. Why have you not applied for a British passport? Why are you still traveling on a Nigerian passport? Why? For the main fact that he was detained does not necessarily mean that you were locked away in a room. As long as they took the documentation and your movement was restricted, because your movement would have been restricted as long as they have got your passport. Okay? So he came out the airport after 45 minutes. That brother, sister, or daughter that traveled from Huddersfield 200 miles plus to Heathrow to pick him up, that story will be shared with that individual going to pick you up. By the time he gets home, if he's coming from Jamaica anyway, by the time he reach home, they'll be talking about the White Rum and the holiday in Jamaica. You, the brother and sister or daughters at home, may not necessarily hear that story. I mean, never ever hear that story. Now that individual is passed, that individual that went to the airport to pick up dad has got that story. May have evidence as well. You do not know. You chose to take it up on yourself that you're going to submit the deceased estate claim. but you have not got that story. That may be the only story or the only information that would make that estate entitled to compensation. Very important that you share information. So let me, with the close family member claim, one individual, and we have come across that, got one such case at the moment, where one individual in the family can have 2 or 3 close family member claim. And I give you that scenario. Mother came from Nigeria or Ghana, 1961. Had a son that was born in Nigeria. Came to England, the mother, and the mother married to a Polish. Poland is not a Commonwealth country. The son that was born in the Commonwealth country, 1982, been here for a number of years, start having immigration issues. Start being asked questions that should never have been asked to him. Where you get a passport from, etc., etc. As a result of that, was in a job, had to leave the job, consequently lost the home, etc., etc. At some point in 1990, said son died. The son that came here with the mother passed away. By that time, that son has got 5 children. The mother that came here with the son, 2 brothers and sisters, even more. The children decided to put in a deceased estate claim for the son. When my son came here with mother, yeah, but mother is still alive. The deceased estate claim is accepted or offer 10,000. The amount, the fact that it's 10,000 to a great extent, it's close. As far as the close family member claim is concerned, is neither here nor there. And the reason for that is, as soon as that claim, as soon as the scheme has offered a claim, that should now trigger you to start submitting your close family member claim. Okay, and I'll explain why as I go along. So, one of the daughters and one of the sons submit the claim. The siblings, brothers and sisters of that deceased individual, all 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10 of them can submit a claim. The mother can submit a claim. The children too can submit a claim. While they're submitting the claim for the close family member, they discovered by speaking to the mother that the mother was also impacted. And along the way, at some point, the Home Office said, one of you siblings, brothers or sisters of that deceased individual, based on what we've heard along the way by submitting a claim, you too has got a claim. Because one of you were not born here, you were born in Nigeria, and you had the same similar thing, where you came over and a Nigerian passport, you too can make a claim. So what is gonna happen here is the children, they have got a claim against the deceased estate. The mother who brought the son over from Nigeria, she has got a close family member claim. And all the siblings have got a close family member claim. But one of those siblings is impacted, which is the mother's daughter. So the mother is going to make another claim. Her son is deceased. Mother is going, if someone look confused. The mother is making a claim against her son's deceased estate claim. That's one claim for the mother. But the daughter is impacted as well, so the mother is going to put it under the close family member claim. Yeah? Also, along the way, the sibling, the children of the deceased individual found out that one of them is also impacted, despite the fact that they were born in the UK. Now, I'm not going to confuse you anymore because the one particular individual seems a bit confused. Everything I said there, just now, there's a live case like that. The only difference is they did not come from Nigeria. They came from Jamaica. In that particular case, we identified 9 claims, okay? Then after start speaking to the family, he got up to 18 claims. But what I didn't tell you, that as a result of what the family was going through, the mother of those children divorced that father before he deceased. So she too has got a claim. And also, it was an extensive period of time that this went on for. After divorcing, about 3 years later, he got involved in another relationship. For more than 2 years.
You confused now?
So she too can make a claim. And as of a couple of weeks ago, we said possibly that there's 21 claims in this particular family. That is why I say it's very important that you share the information along with each other. Now, in many cases, family will have squabbles. What I say,
what Roland is saying,
yeah.
Don't forget, we're using real cases,
yeah,
of extended family, real cases.
I'm not just saying that because I want to make a point. This is actually a live case, right? We are going to have an event in Brixton Seventh-day Adventist Church, hopefully in January. And if you attend or you attend on the Zoom, some of them will be there, and you can see what I'm saying is actually true. In terms of indication of numbers, because the numbers are important for me anyway, and you also, the highest payout you have for a close family member is 50,000 for a close family member. It starts at level 1 and can go up, but it depends on how your life has been impacted. The close family member claim is due to how you were impacted. Let me use this crude analogy. You're standing at the bus stop, you saw an accident, your family members were in the accident. You were not in the accident, you were at the bus stop. However, due to the stress and inconvenience, etc., that your close family member, I'm not going to say which one it is, was involved in, you emotionally, anxiety, inconvenience, etc. Also, you had to spend on that individual, i.e., gas, electric, they may have moved into your house, they may have been homeless, you have to put them up in a homeless shelter, etc. As of the 22nd of August last year, you can also claim for living expenses. Okay, in many cases, that individuals who end up homeless, etc. As I said earlier on, lost the job, lost the home, etc. Okay, yeah. So as of the 22nd of last year, you can claim 22nd of August last year, 2022. You can also claim for living expenses. That's money that you've actually spent on this individual while they're going through the struggle, lost the job, etc. Okay. There are many more elements. That's why we say engage, speak to us, and we will go into the intricacies and the details of the different cases, different elements of the case, the claim, different categories, etc. We speak primarily from lived experience, meaning we have been there, we've done it, and we are doing it. Okay? Thank you very much for listening and all of this.
Thank you very much, Roland. So you notice we're just focusing on the close family members application process. And what Roland is saying, it's almost a limitless number. We cannot say, only 2 or 3 people, because there will be many people affected as close family members. And we will help you to do that, identify who's affected, and then get that on the application. Now, I know it's a lot of information to absorb and to take in. Twice a month, so the second and last Sunday of each month, we have a Sunday chat where we focus on those individual bits: primary claimant, close family claims, and deceased estate. We do that twice a month on the Zoom platform. And we have an international audience from across the world joining us on that and raising questions. So that's where we clarify, and where people with specific issues, we can address that. And after the chat, people have access to a WhatsApp contact or email contact if they want further information on their particular case. So second and last Sunday of each month. In addition to what's on your chair, on your table, Q&A, first and third Sunday of the month is law Q&A. So there are many opportunities to get more information about your own case, or even some of the stuff we've just discussed that you need more clarifications. It's a lot to absorb and take in. Yeah? Don't forget, you've got 2 web pages. You have Liverpool Advocates for Windrush.org, and you have Justice for Windrush Generations with an S.co.uk. Both those websites have got a lot of information, and they also tell you when they meet and how to join the Zoom hybrid platform. So once again, thank you very much, Roland, for giving us that information on close family and deceased estate. Here's an opportunity now to ask any question from the audience, please. Anything you want clarification on before we go into our next presentation, where Tayo is going to present something to us. Any question from the floor? Without giving you any personal information, just any general question, please. B?
It's not a question as such.
One second.
It's not a question as such. May I suggest to law that they might make use of the Afro-Caribbean Society, the university.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of young people there that came in this year. Because I did meet with them at Freshers Week in September, and they've got a really good society there.
Yeah.
So everything that you said today, I think they need to know about in terms of how they've been impacted in some way or other. And you can get to them. Tanika, I'll give you their contact number. And maybe you need to go along with some, because you can go to the societies and address them.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And of course, can we just say as well? Thank you.
Derek, Natalie has a question.
Of course. Can we just say as well, whatever information you heard today, please just pass it on. And if you don't know enough to pass it on, just give them one of the leaflet, the flyer, right? So please share the information.
Thanks, that was quite helpful. I'm actually in the African JMU African Society group. I'm on the WhatsApp group, so I'll put the flyer on. I was saying to Tanika about it. It's quite helpful in terms of the information. And I was wondering if there's any data graphic that we can share, because you mentioned about in terms of the scheme for the Canadian, the Australian, and in comparison, this portion for the Commonwealth, African and Caribbean. If we had that, we can share it. And as a local councillor, the more information I have, the more I can share at the different platforms. So anything, and even that information about the Zoom every second and last Sunday that I can share, because some people might not know, because in terms of the family thing, that was quite informative. I thought it was 25, but obviously 21, but the impact it can have on generations. So anything like that, I'd like to share it.
Yeah, thank you. And just to say, all our events is advertised on the Eventbrite platform. If you Google Justice for Windrush or Sunday Chat, it comes up immediately. So everything we do is on the Eventbrite platform. Both organizations advertise on the Eventbrite platform. So that's important. Now, just before
I can come back to Natalie's question.
Yeah, you want, yes, it's about information.
Yes.
Yeah.
Natalie, just wanted to come back on your question. Now, the compartmental
Comparative.
comparative data, thank you. It's been a long day, forgive me. That's what tripping up my own, see, tripping up on my own tongue.
Sorry, Natalie. I do not know where that data is to show the analysis, but I've done it personally because I was particularly interested. So I went to each of the schemes and I analyzed the data and I compared it, and that's how I can make that statement because I've done it. Where it's done by somebody else and it's out there, I couldn't tell you. So I can share with you what I've done because I know I've done it and I know what I've found. So that I can do, but otherwise, they're not gonna put it out there because it's just gonna be highlighting the discrepancies. I'll stop there. Thank you.
And just to mention something, 1 minute, Alex, just to mention, the Home Office, they produce what they call fact sheets. And it's public knowledge. They put it out and they would say, the Windrush compensation scheme, this is what we've paid out, how many millions. And they list the countries where the claims has come from. And I said it this morning, EU has got the highest number of applicants claimed because EU rectified their status through the Windrush compensation scheme. And if you look at the other countries, take Bangladesh, for example, I think it's 152 or 158 applications. But that information is public knowledge. It's out there. So anybody can have a look at it. What we're trying to do is to get the public more aware of the scheme. And Tanika this morning mentioned Commonwealth country. 65, is it 65 or 68? 65 different Commonwealth countries from A to Z. So when Africans is thinking it's Caribbean only, they're mistaken. When Asian is thinking it is Black people only or Caribbean only, they're mistaken. So the Commonwealth is a huge area covering 65 countries. So when you talk about Windrush, let people know it's global. It's not a UK Caribbean issue. It is global. Alex? 1 second, I'll come back to you.
Yeah, so Natalie, thank you for that. I think it's also something for us to think about, not just, so our website is currently under construction, and one of the tabs is research. So the idea I'm getting is we can actually pick some of these important data, make it available on the website, so that our research column will have all this information, and whoever wants it can just go and pick it.
Yes,
We'll be
excellent.
happy
And
to do that.
in fact,
Natalie has to come back to
this is the sort of work that Alex does. And so, you know, we mentioned earlier this morning, there's a questionnaire that sits on the website and the QR code give you access. That is running till the end of the year, collecting data and information. Alex was also got his recorder to capture people's story on a digital recorder. That will also be fed into the system. We're trying to collect as much data, much information as possible. So if, for example, today is the first time you heard about Windrush, Alex need to know that because he wants to capture that. Okay? And if it is today is the first time you heard about deceased estate, you didn't know that existed, Alex wants to capture that. This is the sort of information that we want to capture, because at the end of that, we have enough data to challenge Home Office and other people, because they're not doing enough. All this, the public education and the campaign, we're doing it. Home Office is not doing it. As far as Home Office is concerned, they don't care if you apply or you didn't know. It saves them money. So we're doing it. So as much information, as I said, share with other family members and friends and let them know there is a questionnaire to be completed and there's a website to access information. Roland?
Natalie,
Okay.
had to come back.
Yeah, 1 second. Is your point related or is it a different point? Shall we just finish, Natalie, and then we bring your point? Yeah,
We also have to-
yeah. And then we go to that.
in my day job, I do research, and when we're talking about impact, it's so important to have the qualitative in terms of the psychological, emotional, and the quantitative in terms of that bit. So I think that will be very important. And I think what I was referring to in terms of the disparity, I think you mentioned it's 2 years for the Commonwealth and 5 years. So you need to have that to show basically, and the more people know and they see it as an infographic, it resonates and the information goes out a bit more.
Yeah, very good point. And that's why I keep saying, challenge your MPs and just say, why is it that the Commonwealth country is being penalized with a 2 year and yet the other countries is 5 years? So let's try and get some sort of harmony and standard. Very good point. Yeah, another question here.
I missed some of today because I was at work, but I was just going to ask what you were saying. As someone that's not directly affected by it, is there any ways, like what you're saying, about letters to MPs, that you can advocate for people that are affected or get the changes made towards the compensation scheme?
Yes, and this is the work that Justice for Windrush Generation been doing for the past 2 years. And next Tuesday, the 14th of November, we're in Parliament, and the rally is being sponsored by Kim Johnson, that particular session. Okay. So what we keep saying, although you may not be directly impacted, and it's good to say this, a lot of people who are born in the UK from parents who are from another country, whether Commonwealth or the rest of the world, they will not know much about their status until they try to apply for a passport or a documentation. And then the red flags, alarm bell goes, because your parents didn't have a status. And what we said this morning, remember, the guidance note make it specific. If you have a grandparent or a parent, you must be settled in the UK by the 1st of January 1973 from a Commonwealth country. If you're from a non-Commonwealth country, you still need to be settled in the UK by the 1st of January 1989. However, if any of those dates is later, 1990, the Windrush scheme is not for you, it doesn't cover. Anything after 1989 is outside Windrush. So that is a different issue. However, what we've said, the Windrush timeline run from 1948 up to 1989. That's the timeline.
1st of January.
Yeah. So the first generation who came in, second subsequent generation, but the cutoff period is the 1st of January 1989. That's where Windrush stopped. And everything else is immigration, separate issue. Okay? So that is really what we're trying to get over to people when we say who's eligible for the scheme. We want to know, when did you arrive in the UK? Or your parents arrive, or your grandparents. Those are important factors to check who's eligible for the scheme, to rectify status and whether or not you've been impacted for compensation application. They're two separate things. So we always say, check your status first, and then compensation would be a consequence of what you've suffered.
All right. I see you want to ask a question. We'll come to you next. Just to answer your question, the lady asked last.
Yeah.
I'm not directly affected by Windrush. I don't know any of my family members who are. I've learned about Windrush in 2019, February, and here I am today, many years later, advocating on their behalf. I feel as a young Black woman from the Caribbean, privileged, I'm proud to be Caribbean. I have a voice and I want to use it. If we don't say something, nothing is going to happen. I think, as Patrick said in his poem, when do we need change? Now. Our generations that passed before us, Garrett listed them, they put in the work. What
are we doing as this generation now? What's gonna happen in the next generation? If you and I don't stand up and try to do something for them. So here I am advocating on their behalf. Because if we don't do it, who will?
Yes.
How?
And also.
Eric, can I answer her question, how?
Yeah.
How, as you have done already, you've already started, you've asked the question,
Are you
you're
here?
here, you came along, you spoke up, you asked the question to people like myself and Gareth and the older ones. Just keep spreading the message. You're already doing it. And if you need to do more, volunteer with us. We're always looking for good help. Not that there's no bad help, but come volunteer with us.
Yeah.
And learn more. I'm happy to teach you and show you what I know in regards to advocacy and how to maybe just help people with their applications and say, well, no, that wouldn't work because that lends itself to discrimination or racism. The schemes doesn't cover that. And maybe you might like start like the immigration law, and then you might say, you know, I want to do the immigration course and become an immigration lawyer with outside of being a solicitor or a barrister. So there's that too. But speak up, we have a voice. Thank you.
And also, just in addition, you know, everybody that attend today, you will go and talk to somebody else when you leave here today or tomorrow. You'll say, I've been to an event in Crawford House about Windrush. And this is what they have said, right? So have the conversation. Even if you're not directly affected, other people might be affected. Only when you start the conversation that people say, oh, what is Windrush? They were asking me that question in Kensington yesterday. What is Windrush? Because they don't know. And one African said to me, I saw something on the news about Windrush. Those Caribbean people. That's how we describe it. Those Caribbean people. He separated himself completely from Windrush because that is a narrative that's out there. And we aim to change that. And that is why we give you the 65 country. It's global. It's everywhere. See? And you know, please take the leaflet with you because it has information, website, Twitter, Facebook, and so forth, QR code. It does have the information. And if you take any more, share it, give somebody a leaflet. Thank you very much. Now,
There's two questions.
Oh.
The third row and the last. The third and the last, Gareth.
Yeah.
The third.
Oh, third from this end.
Third, yes, and then the last.
Sorry, guys, it's been a long afternoon.
That's okay.
I'm just wondering whether you're linked into the local sickle cell society.
No, the
Oh,
local
yeah.
one,
Okay.
no, the one in Wolverhampton, my colleague who is also the.
No, I'm speaking about locally.
No.
No.
Yeah, I am.
But
Yeah, he's.
Yeah, and the Liverpool sickle cell is just going through some changes as well. But that's another issue that is kept quiet
And the last row.
because people don't even know they're carrying the traits. That's another conversation to be had.
Yeah, but just in access.
Yes, access, of course, and sharing information. Let me just take this question before. So, let me just come back to, just before I tell you on to bring our session to a close. I just want to, Roland, you wanted to respond to a point, or you want to make a separate point?
I want to make a point.
Yeah, come along.
The Windrush scheme as it is not fit for purpose. And that is why we host these rallies and a host of comments. We also work alongside others, from researchers, journalists, etc., to encourage you to engage with them. Right. Secondly, those who are from the diaspora, African diaspora, from the continent, we put special effort out to reach out to those people on the continent Also, we don't only encourage individuals to apply to the scheme, those who are eligible. We believe in cultural sensitivity. So we've got people like in Ghana, we've got a couple of contacts there, Nigeria, Jamaica, etc. And those are individuals that understands the scheme just that little bit more, that an individual can actually go see them in Nigeria and speak with them directly. So if you're Nigerian, I mean, me personally, if I'm speaking and I want to go into detail, I'll go into some Jamaican platform. Likewise, if you are Nigerian, you're here today, you've got a Nigerian friend, etc., etc. We've got people in Nigeria that we can give it a number and speak with them and have a discussion. Because we know there are quite a number of individuals from the continent that are impacted, but they still do not believe that they are impacted. Just like the young lady said a minute ago, she is not impacted. My question to her would be, how do you know you have not been impacted? So with that said, what I would say, get to understand the scheme. If you were born in the UK, let's start there. If you were born in the UK and your parent or grandparent came from a Commonwealth country before 1989, you should be reading up about the scheme, understanding the scheme, and by understanding the scheme, you eliminate yourself, not the other way around. Do not make any assumption that you're not eligible to apply to the scheme. First, find out what the scheme is about and decide for yourself. Then, once you've got the information, if you're eligible to apply to the scheme. Secondly, and if you're entitled to compensation. Whenever I am asking anyone information about themselves, I go from the grandparents, the uncles, the aunt, etc., etc. And in most cases, we identify someone that is eligible to apply to the scheme. Okay?
Thank you very much for that, Roland. So, Ty, I'm sure you're warming up now. Yes, to come along. Okay, that's good. Keep warming up. I'll bring you on in a moment. So, have you seen this flyer on your? So this flyer, the Q&A, is promoting the sessions where we meet on Zoom, where individual questions can be submitted before we meet. So if you have a question that you need a definitive answer, and you submit that question 36 to 48 hours ahead of the session, we will research the answer and then give you the answer on the platform when we meet on the first and third Sunday.
Anonymously, of course.
Right? First and third Sunday. If you haven't got this, don't worry. Eventbrite, again, remember Eventbrite for everything. Q&A, Eventbrite will find it. Eventbrite will find Sunday Chat, because that's the platform we use to promote everything we do. So please, and then share the information with others, because somebody may have a question that need answering, but by you sharing this information, that will prompt them to think about, I need an answer to my question. Okay, so please, the Q&A, first and last Sunday, first and third Sunday of the month. You see, notice, so we got 2 sessions in the same month. We have the second and last for the Sunday chat, and we have the first and third for the Q&A. Let me repeat. First and third for the Q&A, second and last for the Sunday chat. Each of these platforms is global, so people can join from anywhere in the country, in the world. But our time zone is GMT. Yeah. 3 to 5 p.m.
Yes, first and third Sunday. 3
to 5 p.m. Sunday chat, 2 to 4 p.m. Notice the difference? 2 to 4 for the Sunday chat, 3 to 5 for the Q&A. Yeah? Good. Now, Let me just give a quick summary and I'll bring Tayo to bring us to a conclusion. So this morning, we start with identifying about Windrush. What is Windrush? How it came about? And we started with the first generation arriving in Tilbury, 1948. We also mentioned that first generation experiences a lot of hostility. The second generation, which includes myself, as Tanika mentioned, I've not been impacted by Windrush, nor any of my family. My family now lives in Canada and in USA. Not been impacted. But it doesn't mean I'm not interested in Windrush, because my people, my community has been impacted. So that is the reason why I've been doing this work, campaigning, because lots of people who've been impacted need help. So in terms of people volunteering, getting involved, anyone can get involved in this work. If you have a passion for civil rights, if you have a passion for justice, social justice, you can get involved as a volunteer and spread the word out there in your locality, in your environment, whether that will be in the workplace, wherever you are, you can spread the word. We then identify 3 specific areas of claim. Having established what is status and compensation, we then spoke about primary, close family, and deceased. Each of those have a separate guidance note to help you to understand each section. So the primary claimant, I've got 42 or 44 pages of notes to help you to understand what is a primary claimant. The next one, close family, also have notes to help you to understand how to, how to put, to see whether or not you are able to say, yes, I've been supporting primary claimant for X amount of years, I'm going to make an application. And then we spoke about if the person has passed as a deceased person, then somebody from the family, either the executor, somebody from the family will make the application, and we stress there is no difference between the primary claimant and the close family. There's no, sorry, on a deceased estate, no difference. You have to be still eligible, have to be reside, have to be in the UK at a fixed period of time. So that brings us to the sort of conclusion of today's session. Today is not the end of the conversation. We want the conversation to continue after today with your own families and friends. Okay? So please share the information. It's my pleasure now to, first of all, thank you all for coming and for participating. Thank Roland for coming from London to join us. And thank you for your contribution and close family members. Tanika and Alex, Jeanette, Grenan is not here. That's the team around law.
And Maureen.
And Maureen. So Maureen is part of the advocacy based in Wolverhampton. Okay. So again, she's a qualified lawyer. And so that's where the work is done between Liverpool and Wolverhampton. So that brings us to our final speaker this evening or this afternoon. So it's my pleasure to bring Tayo back to the platform. And Tayo is going to present to us, I don't know what he's going to present, but I know he's going to present to us something. And that will be the end of our session for today. We do have some food if you want to take some, but we haven't got anything to put it in. But yes, if you can use plate, that's all right. So Tayo, would you come forward, please? And it's my pleasure now to give you the mic and let you present to us your final piece.
Thank you very much. Peace does that mean just the one? Because I have about 16. Okay, I will recite a poem that I wrote in 2020 during COVID. When I was watching the leaders of the world, two in particular, say how because of their whiteness, the greatness of their histories, that they would override COVID. Those two leaders being Boris Johnson and the Orange Man at the White House. And watching them, a line came to my head, which was, "The empire has no clothes." I didn't know how, I just thought I'm going to write something using that line. The empire has no clothes. And it ended up in a poem, which I call Greatness in a Time of COVID. And really it's an acknowledgement of the fact that when COVID hit, it was people from former colonies who were in the front line, who often lost their lives in the service of humanity. So greatness in a time of COVID. We made our homes in the belly of the beast that devoured our ancestors and spat them out on the other side of the globe, that stole our gold and rubber, our skills and knowledge, our art and music, our history. It gorged and fattened itself, dressed in unmissable finery, and declared itself proudly the empire. It saw its greatness in our puzzled eyes as we stared up the barrel of a gun from every corner of the earth. Its guns were needed still, we were told, to protect us from the socialists and the communists. Capitalism, our enslaver for centuries, would liberate us one day. It bought our rulers and continued the quiet theft of our humanity and our dignity as it planted poison and bombs where once there was rice and diamonds. And then the virus came, silent, swift, and deadly. We answered the call to the front line to confront this invisible enemy. We asked simply for gloves, masks, visors, and gowns. As we fell one by one, we finally began to see that what the gentle ones had been whispering loudly had been true all along. We'd been feeding on the beast's excrement, unmindful of the fact that the empire has no clothes. Thank you. I'm now finished with a song which I think many, if not most, if not all of you know, so I would like you to sing along with me, please. Yellow bird up high in banana tree, yellow bird, you sit all alone like me. Did your lady friend leave the nest again? That is very sad, made me feel so bad. You can fly away in the sky away. You are lucky than me. I also have a pretty girl, she not with me today. They always send the pretty girl, make them the nest, then they fly away. Yellow bird up high in banana tree. Yellow bird, you sit all alone like me. Better fly away in the sky away, pick a coming soon, pick from night to noon. Black and yellow, you like banana too. They might pick you somewhere. Wish that I was a yellow bird, I fly away with you. But I am not a yellow bird, so here I sit, nothing else to do. Yellow bird, yellow bird, yellow bird. Thank you.
You very much. Before you leave, I'll be very happy if you can, if you have a smartphone, you go to menti.com, menti.com. And we have a code here. So go to menti.com. This is a very simple exercise. If you want, you can also come and scan the QR code and rate the program. We have 1 to 5. 1 is very unsatisfactory. You didn't like it, perhaps the food wasn't nice. 5 is excellent, meaning you really enjoy the program. So we'll be very happy if you can do this. It helps us to know where we can improve going forward with our event. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. Again, feel free, if there's any question that you don't want to raise today, you can raise those questions on another occasion, either on our Q&A, or you can come into our Sunday chat and raise any question that you would like us to answer. There's very much more I can say, except we thank everyone. Please, as I keep saying, please share this information with friends and family. Take the leaflet. It does have our email, our website, and social media contact. The questionnaire online will stay till the end of the year. So you have plenty of time to actually contribute to the questionnaire. And Alex says it will take no more than 50 minutes. Some have done it in 10 minutes. But again, the answers to that is very important that we collect that information. It will help us to understand what are some of the issues you're experiencing as barriers, for example, around the Windrush compensation scheme and status. So, Tanika reminded me, if you need to have some food, then, just come along and we'll be able to give you a plate and cover it up with another plate because we haven't got any cleaning, etc. Before you go. So you can have that later on. Yes.
Oh, thank you. Great.
Very good. So listen, keep in touch. Yes. Because we want to make sure that, yes, more information. Good, good.
Bye, everyone. Thank you very much for attending today. Thank you.